Something I never thought I would be doing on this show and in my career is bringing you health tips and trying to give you some ideas to lead a healthier lifestyle. But I've certainly tried to embrace that kind of mindset over the last 9 or 10 months since beginning the ReviveHealthPlan.com. And Dr. Tim Scott is joining me in studio. And we'll brag about some of my progress over the last 9 or 10 months in a minute. But really, I wanted to have you come in and share some of the things that you've been trying to implore me to follow and teach me to change my lifestyle, which, let's be perfectly honest, was pretty crappy for a long time.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. And what fun is making progress if you can't brag about the results? So absolutely, we'll take some time to do that.
You know, what you didn't tell me 10 months ago was how expensive the downside was going to be on the end. I think I sent you a text last week that I downsized my pants again, and the pants came in, and I already need to downsize again.
Yeah, I'm always talking to people at the beginning when they start this, and I say the two things, that are the negatives are, number one, we have to make sure we preserve your muscle, and number two, the amount of money that you're going to spend on new clothes.
But it's totally worth it. I'm glad I saved a bunch of clothes that I put on a nice Ralph Lauren leather jacket that I have not worn in 15 years, and I'll be able to wear it this winter. I'm very excited about that.
Well, Scott, I didn't think I'd be calling you bougie at the beginning of this, but I think I'm going to have to now.
It's been amazing. And by the way, guys, if you're losing weight, if you're joining the ReviveHealthPlan.com, maybe you got weight loss goals for 2025 already, the best investment you can make is a ratchet belt. That is the greatest invention ever. After buying the fourth new belt, the hell with this. I'm going to try out one of these ratchet belt things.
Yeah, that's 100%. So you can't. The holes can't hold you
right,
at this point.
Right. You just got to keep tightening it until you're ready to buy a new one. The reason why I've been so successful, I mean, let's be honest. I have changed my lifestyle, but it's thanks to weight loss medication, and it's your instruction, your direction, your guidance as well. But these GLP-1s that we're hearing so much about are really miracle drugs in many senses of the word, not just to lose weight, but to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and all the other problems. Yeah,
you've really stayed up on all the research that's come out over the year, which is impressive. And I agree. The GLP-1 medications, semaglutide and tirzepatide, are absolutely wonderful. But you did mention the most important thing, which is lifestyle modification, because nothing can be successful short-term or long-term if you're not making some of that education, some of that progress, and those changes.
I'm also learning, as I continue to do research about the GLP-1s, that they have other effects too. This was fascinating that they can actually reduce abuse of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, so we actually were noticing that when we first started doing this over a year ago, is people would mention, I don't have the urge to smoke. I don't have the urge to drink like I used to. And that also goes along with, as you can attest to, how it reduces the food noise and the cravings for certain foods that you used to have. And the cool thing is, like you mentioned, now the research is coming out. I think one of the larger studies that we were talking about had about 500,000 people that they looked at that had an opiate dependence, and about 8,000 of them were on a GLP-1. And of that 8,000, they noticed a 50% reduction in using or desire to use opiates again.
Why were people talking about this?
Well, I think they will be. I think you need some confirmation data. A lot of these studies are preliminary. Some of them aren't considered the best, double-blind, placebo-controlled, all these things in the research world. But the chatter is happening, and it is coming more to the forefront, because what people are now mentioning is like, oh, there's GLP-1 receptors all over your body. It's not just in your brain. It's in your liver, your kidneys, your skeletal muscle, your smooth muscle. So people are starting to think about that and say, okay, well, we need to do research. How does this affect the heart, the brain, the kidneys? We talked a few weeks ago about that study coming out showing, reduced or improved kidney function in people with chronic kidney disease. So it's everywhere.
So remember, I was educated in Mississippi and Alabama. What is a GLP-1 receptor?
Yeah, so the medicines we talk about, semaglutide and tirzepatide, they act at the glucagon-like peptide receptor. So our body makes this peptide that will be released after we eat meals and bind to these receptors and make us feel full and have different metabolic effects. So what the drug companies did was they came in and said, let's take this peptide that the body normally does and let's make it better. How do we make it bind more tightly to the receptors? How do we make it stay in the body longer? And so that's what you're taking, is these modified, your own enzymes modified to be better.
So the other aspect of this is behavioral modification, and that includes changing what you eat. Don't get me wrong, I'd still love a burger or a pizza. I've used self-control to avoid them remarkably for months in making healthier choices. But the stuff that you're buying in the grocery store, if you think you're making a nice healthy lunch for the kids, if you think you're making a nice lunch to bring to work with you, if you think you're making a nice dinner for the family, you may not be, because of all the processed foods that we're buying in grocery stores today.
God, that's just so important to talk about, because the first thing we speak to all of our clients about is your gut. And what you're putting in your gut, the fuel you put in your body, is going to drive the performance that you get out of it. And so much of what we eat is just absolute junk. I feel like you and I could get off on a tangent forever about this, but think of Food Babe recently.
I don't know what what is Food Babe?
So Food Babe is a lady on social media, and I can't think of her real name.
Is she cute?
Yeah, very.
I may be following her then.
Yeah, I can't think of her full name offhand, but she has taken the fight against her biggest fight is the cereal companies and the dye and the sugar. So basically Kellogg's and Fruit Loops is an example. In the United States, they're using food dyes to make these brighter, because the cereal companies say kids prefer brighter cereal, and we're all like, well,
sure.
Kind of, who cares? Like, why don't we feed them what's healthier? And in other countries, Kellogg's doesn't use food dye. They use natural coloring from like beets and carrots and stuff like that. So the point is just that our food system is sort of rigged against us, and you need to learn the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, so before, a year and a half ago, I would have thought, okay, I'm going to make a turkey and cheese sandwich and bring that to work, and that's going to be better than to go in to grab a burger. But really, even those meats are so preserved and full of other ingredients that it's really not as good a choice as you may think it is.
So one of the worst meats or protein sources you can have is cold cuts or lunch meats. And that's sort of something. So I have a conversation with everyone I talk to about healthy eating and clean eating. They're not necessarily the same thing. And your goal is to start moving towards healthy eating at the beginning. And as you work through our program, I'm going to move you closer to clean eating as well, which is what you're talking about.
So and we're talking to Dr. Tim Scott, revivehealthplan.com. Why do these companies, and this, I don't mean to get into a political conversation, but I mean, why are these companies giving us different food in the United States than they are in other countries? How is this allowed to exist?
Well, you're asking questions a little bit above my pay grade, but let me speculate. Number one, money drives it all, and profit margin.
And the dyes are going to be cheaper than the natural food.
Not only that, their data shows that it sells better. So they frame it that kids prefer, AKA we sell more when it's the dyed foods. And then the reason it's allowed, it has to come down to just lobbyists. It has to be who's lobbying, who's paying the most in Washington.
That's always the way it comes down to it. So how do you recommend people shop healthier, shop cleaner when they go to the store?
So first and foremost, it's about education. Jumping on social media accounts like ours where we're teaching people these things. And there's tons of them. We're not the only one, but it's a great place to start. Educate yourself. But number two, take some simple steps. Start reading labels. Flip packages around and read the label. If there's, some people will follow the rule, if there's more than 5 ingredients, I don't buy it. I don't necessarily do that because sometimes there's a lot of organic and good ingredients, but I do look, if there's things I can't read, if there's words I don't know what they mean, then I know that's a processed or an ultra processed food.
What about when you're looking at the ingredient list? I know that you've tried to encourage me to reduce the amount of sugar intake. I'm trying to, I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I'm trying to reduce my carb intakes. But you're also trying to get me to increase protein. So like I've looked at certain protein bars, protein drinks, protein supplements. Is there like a sugar level or anything else that you should be aware of when you're looking at ingredients?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the first place to start in what we call SAD, which is the standard American diet. Includes, like you said, processed foods, tons of carbs, sugar. The first place you can start is added sugar. I look at everything in terms of added sugar. If it's in there, I'm trying not to get it, or I'm trying to get the lowest amount that I can. And if you start there, just reducing added sugar, avoiding fried, fatty, greasy foods. Some of these very simple things, you are moving so much more in the right direction.
Yeah, Dr. Tim Scott, revivehealthplan.com here on the Scott Sand Show. I want to ask you about salt in products in a second, but we'll need to take a break. First, can I tell you my favorite health headline of the last couple of weeks?
Yes, please do.
Standing desks do not reduce the risk of stroke and heart failure, according to a study. I don't know if common sense would tell you if you're going to be sitting at a desk for 9 hours a day, that's probably not a healthy lifestyle. But I got so tired of people trying to shove standing desks down my throat. I feel like I'm getting vindicated just a little bit. I don't have a problem with the standing desks. I just don't want one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And honestly, that was funny. I saw that article. It just comes down to movement. Whether you're sitting at a desk all day or standing at a desk all day.
Get up and move around.
You got to move. You got to move your legs. And that's all it comes down to.
That doesn't mean go socialize with Karen next door in the cubicle for an hour and a half. Get some work done. But you don't need to. And the people who have, again, I don't mean to belittle you, but the people who have standing desks love to brag that they have a standing desk, right?
Yeah, and that's what I usually say. I said, well, does your desk walk? Because that's what you need to do.
The people who will have the little the Padama, whatever they're called, the bicycles under their desk, they're probably doing a lot better than your standing desk here.
100%. Yeah.
Dr. Tim Scott, revivehealthplan.com, joining me on the Scott Sand Show. And we were talking about sugar last segment. There's also a problem with sodium, with salt intake in our country today. And I'm victim of that for sure. That's probably why for so long I had higher blood pressure, because of the amount of fast food and restaurant dining that I went through. I'm off blood pressure meds and have been for a couple of years now, because I think I've reduced successfully my sodium intake. But I do still eat out a lot. And so many restaurants, even though I think salt usage has declined in recent years, is still higher whenever you go out to eat.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I do want to stress, this is another sort of, we were vindicating the sitting desk people, and I want to vindicate the salt people, because salt is not inherently bad for you. I mean, we need salt. It's a mineral.
And we need it for flavors, too.
Exactly. And
salt and butter. What about butter? Can I take a sidetrack on butter for a second?
Absolutely. I encourage butter over oils, especially a nice grass-fed butter. We try not to actually keep oils in our house, and we just cook with
not even like an extra virgin olive oil?
We will keep, we have an olive and avocado oil that we'll keep to cook with if we really need to put an oil in it.
But as a Southern boy, it's music to my heart to hear that butter is fine.
Yes. Now, again.
Now, I'm not talking about a stick of butter.
Right. There's pros and cons, but the choice would be butter over oil, and grass-fed butter if possible.
Interesting. So that's good to know. When you're going out to eat, I mean, what should you be concerned about, though, with sodium intake? And go back to your train of thought before I interrupted.
Yeah, so like anything, the key is moderation. What I try to tell people is avoid adding salt. You can cook with salt in reasonable amounts at home that recipes call for, but try to avoid adding salt, and especially when you go out to eat. I have this conversation with my dad all the time when him and I go out. Before he even takes a bite of food, the salt is all over it. I'm like, Dad, whoa.
Taste it first.
There's already at least 2,000 milligrams of salt in this. I'm not sure you need more. But like I said, moderation is the key. And also, again, education. Being aware of like what dishes and what chains are going to be the worst for you, because there are certainly some that are worse than others.
So the American Heart Association recommends no more than 2,300 milligrams of salt per day. How much is that? How much salt is that?
Yeah, so that's about a teaspoon, I think, right? I think 2,000 milligrams is a teaspoon.
So that's not even, we put more than that on our fries. Not that we should be eating fries, but there's certainly more than that in a medium thing of fast food fries.
Well, and that's why eating out and fast food can lead to such a high salt diet. Think about at home, if you're cooking, think if you cook 3 meals a day at home, how much are you grabbing for the salt other than a shake or two? And is that really going to add up to a teaspoon? My answer is probably not.
Are there good salt alternatives? Is sea salt better than regular salt?
So I definitely don't recommend salt alternatives. I tell people if you're going to use salt, go ahead and use salt. But yeah, like a Himalayan sea salt is good. Grinding that up is what I prefer. But I do stay away from some of the salt alternatives.
Why is that? Because of more preservatives and things like Mrs. Smith's or whatever it is?
For me, yeah, it's just more processed. I don't know exactly what it's being engineered with, and I like to just stick to natural stuff.
And I every time I talk with you or Mia, I continue to get amazed too at how much like plastic we're consuming. That's a whole other side issue.
Oh my God, yeah, don't take us down that road. But we'll share the stat again for anyone who didn't hear it last time. It's the average American consumes 5 grams per week of plastic, which is the weight of a credit card. And that's from microplastics in foods and everything.
That's just crazy. Again, Dr. Tim Scott, revivehealthplan.com. So if you're going out to eat, we're certainly supportive of all the local restaurants in town. We don't want to say never go out to eat, but just make smarter decisions. And some of these fast food places are just loaded with sodium. For example, KFC. If you went in for KFC popcorn nuggets, yeah, you got to worry about the fat and the calories. But it also, as you said, that dish alone, about 1,800 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah, and another popular restaurant is, what about that high-class Italian cuisine, Olive Garden?
Right.
Is that what it is? Yes. Olive Garden?
Yeah. Hell, they put salt right on the breadsticks.
Right. So that's one. And again, the whole point here is, and what we talk to everybody about is, nobody's asking you to give up all the great things you enjoy in life. It's just moderation. And I talk to everybody about that 90-10 rule, where 90% of the time I'm trying to choose the cleanest and the best foods. So 10% of the time when I do go to Olive Garden or a local restaurant, I can choose what I want and I'm comfortable with that. I don't feel like I've cheated myself.
So the Olive Garden chicken parm, 2,900 milligrams of sodium.
Holy moly. And, here's another thing to be aware of is we talk a lot about seed oils too, and foods being cooked in oils. I don't want to name any names, but there are restaurants that you might consider healthier, and they are, but you also have to think about what the food's cooked in, and they might be baked in oils and salt, like you said. So I would think that soup would be a safe choice in some restaurants, right? You would think.
But apparently not. At Carrabba's, their Sicilian chicken soup, which you look at it, it's broth, some vegetables, and chicken, but it has almost 4,000 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah, and this just comes back to the importance of buying fresh and cooking fresh, right? These are probably being made at a facility and being sent there. I don't mean to speak for Carrabba's. Maybe they do make things on site, but a lot of times in restaurant chains, things like soups and stuff are packaged in a warehouse and, a big kitchen and then sent to that location.
So in that particular dish, in that soup, even though it's got 3,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 calories and 5 grams of fat, if you only knew that sounds like a good, smart choice.
Agreed. And it just goes into reading ingredients, reading labels at the grocery store, or knowing what you're doing when you're going out to eat.
Should you be concerned? I know that you're pushing me to eat more protein, but should you be concerned anymore about your calorie intake or your fat gram intake, or is that old school thinking?
No, I think it is relative. And what happens when you start to become aware of your diet and what you're eating is you kind of know calories in foods. So I always encourage people to start tracking calories, but I don't ask people to track every day forever because that just becomes too much. But you'll notice if you track your calories for a week, if you track your protein for a week, then you start to get an idea what each meal is and what you're consuming daily, and you know your range.
Dr. Tim Scott, revivehealthplan.com. Again, I've been on a remarkable journey thanks to you. I mean, you and Mia and everybody at Revive Health Plan have really changed my life. It's not just being able to wear smaller clothes. It's the elevator in our building was out, and I was not out of breath going up and down the stairs. I would have had to stop. A year ago, I literally would have stopped on every flight of stairs to take and gather my breath because I just wasn't able to breathe because I'd gotten so fat.
Well, you've been glowing, Scott. I'll tell you, you're a handsome man, and it's just getting better. But share again what's your journey, what's your progress been over the course of a year?
So when you and I met, around this time last year, you were asking me what I wanted to lose, and I don't know, 25, 30 pounds would be nice. You bumped that up to I think 50 or 60. And I thought, well, this guy's crazy, but I'll give it a shot and see what happens. I am now over 80. I'm somewhere. I fluctuate, as you and I have talked about, and I've gotten in a horrible habit of looking at the scale every day. But I'm somewhere at any given day between 80 and 90 pounds. And thanks to the motivation and the approach that I'm taking with this, I want to try to get down to 100 pounds, hopefully by the end of the year. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, obviously, you reach certain plateaus and you have to figure out your new steps. But I'd love to get down 100 pounds, and it would just be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and you hit on the key points. One, it is a journey, especially when you're getting into. I get a lot of people who maybe want to lose 20 pounds or so, and that's a more reasonable time frame in a few months.
Yeah, I got a wedding coming up in 3 months. I want to drop 20 pounds.
Right, and what you're on is a journey, and it's about changing your life, and you have done it, and it does take a lot of work. And just look at the things you talk about that you were never aware of before, and that's the reason a lot of people will ask me, well, I heard you just gain all the weight back when you change. With certain programs, or maybe with people who don't spend the time we do focusing on lifestyle, that may be true. I highly doubt you're going to gain all that weight back with the knowledge that you have.
Dr. Tim Scott, and the great thing about revivehealthplan.com too is that you've got a team of local doctors. You can meet at convenient times with telehealth, which is amazing new technology. I think that's completely innovative for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it convenient. I always tell people, imagine a typical doctor's appointment. You're leaving an hour before, you're driving there, you're signing in at the office, you're waiting to get called back, and then you're in the office waiting for the doc to come in.
The worst.
Yeah. With
and
us,
then you get 2 minutes with
if
them.
your appointment's at 3 o'clock, you press your button and join the call at 3 o'clock.
Dr. Tim Scott, again, if you're interested in this, they can answer all your questions. ReviveHealthPlan.com.